2022 was a pain in the ass for a number of reasons. Whenever you have a Kickstarter that comes out, you've got that lull right after the Kickstarter where you've got to basically, you wait for the product to get delivered and pushed, and there's not really a lot you can do kind of in the middle. So you try to cling on to like organized play and like, online digital type of things. The issue that we also had, though, is that we were manually shipping things. We didn't go with like a backer kit or an agency. So with that, a lot of the team's time that they could have spent doing other things was actually just assembling the Kickstarter and putting that out and sending that out the door themselves. It was a cost-cutting strategy that I'm going to say didn't quite work, but we got it out there. It took its sweet time. But in that, we were also focusing a lot, in that came the challenge of like, well, we don't have anything for the community to do. And one of the weird things that we did is right as the Kickstarter was kind of ending, the company left the Discord. And I don't understand why, but I get elements of this. But I'll chat about that in just a sec. But anyway, coming into 2023, knowing that 2022 was really hard, and we kind of lost a little bit of ourselves, or at least what the company was 3 years prior that I wasn't a part of. We came up with a couple of key strategies for 2023. The first one was revamping our communication efforts. It's always been a problem with Genesis. And then leaving the Discord didn't necessarily help. The idea with it was to be able to let the fan base react to things on their own without it feeling like the company was looming over them. And that's fair. And anybody who's seen a TCG Kickstarter where like the creator will go on like a ban bender as a result of negative feedback, you can kind of see a little bit of the logic behind that. It's a neat idea, I guess, on paper. The problem, though, is that in doing so, it negated the back and forth communication that anybody had with the company. So we literally had a Discord community that was just left to rot. And there was just no communication with them at all. And we were, I don't know, hoping that they would figure it out themselves. So we tried to fix that. We got ourselves back into the Discord, and we started up something called the Weekly Awareness, which was just a weekly, here's how the company is doing. And we also created a regular cadence of social media posting, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for a while, and that worked a little bit. We got some gains from it. We got some confidence boosting. People were a little bit more active, which was great. The social media stuff, like the algorithm was totally hosed. Like I don't know how we had thousands of followers, but like no reach from any of it. No reach, which is an algorithm problem. Like if you don't post ever, you don't post anything that anybody reacts to, no matter how many followers you have, it's just not going to show them. The most important thing to understand about like social media and things like YouTube and whatnot is it doesn't favor the person who's posting. It favors the viewer. They're not going to help you if they already know that nobody's viewing your stuff. That's it. So revamp communication efforts. Second thing we wanted to do was focus on company maturity. This was a 3-tier kind of thing. The easy one was to fix everything. I'm just going to jump to the easy one. Fix everything. The website was a mess, non-functional. The tournament software was a mess and non-functional. The community, not a mess, but non-functional, as I just mentioned. So we wanted to try to just fix and really try to get ourselves back to something that, like, if you saw us and explored us for the first time, you'd look and be like, yes, this is clearly a company that knows what they're doing. We didn't quite look like that off of just what we had. The other two pieces, the company maturity angle of it, was really a lot of B2B, business-to-business kind of things. So the go-to-market strategy that we had was to show that we understood the industry and will stand out through experience and history. Those are things that Kickstarter games can't do. They don't have the history. You can say, I've been working on the game for 16 years, but you haven't actually tried to sell it for 16 years. Things like that. So Genesis being able to say we're 5 years old and we've tested in production and we understand like distro and we understand like local game store partnerships. We understand like the challenges that you go through and we are actively working to correct those or try to combat those. Did great. That was the Dungeon Crawler program. That was appreciating things like product churn and wallet fatigue and like barrier to entry. And we played around with different formats to try to alleviate that. And we took a lot of pride in there's no exclusive rarities as you get into higher things. So like everything was accessible. We wanted to really show like we did this intentionally, so that way local game stores and partners would look and be like, I see you have enough understanding of the industry to see the challenges. And you guys are trying to stand out, and you're showing that you can. That did a lot of work. And many of you probably know why, but I'll make sure that it's clear in a bit. The next thing that we did, though, is we went back to being a B2B. The thing about Kickstarter is that it's a B2C. It's business to consumer, and that's a struggle. That's a challenge. because you get this whole group of community members who've fallen in love with what you have, but like being able to go to a game store, like you don't have product to sell, you don't have like you don't really have a pre-order system. They're like, you've already like taken off the initial customers who were excited about the thing, you've already sold the thing. It's a little tricky. So we wanted to go back to being kind of a pure business to business. The GTM was the kind of first step to that. And we learned a couple things in this process, which the biggest one was that the internet doesn't work as a sole growth strategy. It doesn't. Like trying to turn the internet fandom into people who are who can make things into physical sales, that's very, very difficult to do. Even Flesh and Blood did not succeed. Actually, thing to learn. We're going to jump into thing to learn real quick because I have like things to learn. So this is a thing to learn. Put it in your notes. Which is that the internet does not set the benchmark for success or failure. It doesn't. No matter how good you look, doesn't mean you're great, doesn't mean you're succeeding. No matter how bad you look, it doesn't mean you're failing. Even Flesh and Blood is a good example of this, where the Flesh and Blood did not succeed because of the internet. It definitely sustained, but the internet was not a growth strategy for the game. The growth strategy was a lot of people coming and doing learn to plays and having like the IRA kits and getting into stores and having that avenue for stores to try the game and find their own community in person and play in the Flesh and Blood. And that's a really important thing to understand. Also things like Discord. Discord sucks for growth. The thing about Discord is that you can't just discover it for funsies. And it's a proactive effort from any individual to actually, I want to go into this and I want to see what's up. And God forbid news is spread through a chat channel, because then I had to show up at the right time. Or you have like your announcements channel. But at that point, why don't you just put something on a website? Discord is not social media. Discord is a bad strategy if you want your community to like try to turn this thing into something more than what it is. And if you need the proof of this, feel free to take a look at any Kickstarter that is out there and take a look at the Discord community, any Kickstarter that was like successful, and then take a look at the Discord community numbers and like the social media numbers and match them up. Match them up. Monsters Glare is a great example of this one. I was even talking to Terrence the other day. He's got posts with like thousands of views and like ton of followers, and Discord's like up and lively. 76 people are committed to the Kickstarter. 76 of them. That's it. Internet doesn't mean shit. It doesn't. So part of also going into and kind of respecting that, like, you know, we need the internet to like sustain and communicate, but it's you know, but it's not like our sole strategy. We had to figure out like the in-person thing. So we came up with like sales models and onboarding strategies. We were looking at 30, 60, 90 plans for LGSs. We were coming up with just other ways, like other formats to try to communicate, to try to connect to their respective player base. Like not everybody's competitive, not everybody's casual. So we're like, hey, we have options for everybody, no matter what kind of community you have. So we were focusing a heck of a lot on that. I'll put this one on me. I didn't really put a lot into the onboarding strat. I was really busy learning lesson number 1 about the internet and soul growth strategy. I didn't really know that until I realized how little it was working. I was like, I need to pull back from this. But I was in there doing just a lot of conversations with people, just having a lot of conversations with the community on like the state of the game and trying to get them excited about XYZ thing, and just dealing with just feedback back and forth and kind of being the center of communication all of a sudden from a game that left the server. I popped ourselves back in, and that was also a mistake on my end. But it leads to thing number 2 to also respect, which is that feedback doesn't have to be taken at face value, but it does lead to actual answers. And be okay with that. Again, you know, those discards that just like ban negative feedback, they shouldn't. They should read into them and be like, hey, maybe your idea isn't exactly what we want to do, but how do we take the themes of it, the themes of that, and try to turn it into something very clear and that we can act on, that we know will serve the purposes it needs to. For Genesis, the issue was collectability. Oh God, we sucked at it. It just does. It just did. And the argument was like, people need to want to buy boxes because there still should be a thrill in opening them. I didn't feel that was a great way to like grow a game, but I was definitely turned on to the product needs to be fun to open. There needs to be some excitement. And the thing that I really learned is there needs to be some excitement to being able to get pack support for events. Oh, that one I learned even at the very end of it. I was like, why isn't this working? Because we had people who loved playing the game, but they wouldn't come to events. And it's because the events themselves weren't interesting, because that time, the prize support for dedicating that time to it wasn't good enough. And that's what Spice in the Packs can do for you. I didn't really realize that till like literally like a week ago. I was like, oh God, oh man. Haha. But also in hearing like there needs to be like more foils, there needs to be like XYZ chase thing. It was like, okay, let's dive into what collectability means to all of these people to determine if we need to have like everything be a foil or if there's like a blend. And we picked a blend, and I loved where we landed. But that was a lot of what I spent my time kind of in 2022 doing. I didn't really do a lot of onboarding things. I didn't really focus on it. I was kind of like, yeah, let's try to get the community going. That one's an error on my part. I screwed that one up. The last thing that we really wanted to get focused on, the last real strategy we wanted to get for 2023 was the printing of Invasion. This one's weird, and I don't understand why, but for some odd reason, we had to pay for the entire thing up front, or that's at least what I had heard, to the tune of about $80,000 to $100,000 for the print run that we were looking for. We had to pay for all of it at the very beginning. That's not usually how printers work, by the way. Usually you can do like down payments, or you can at least show purchase orders. You can show purchase orders of product after the fact to say, hey, when you print this, there are people who are going to bring money to us, so that way they can get this product, and then I'm going to take some of that money and I'm going to give it to you to pay for the print run. Purchase orders are great things. They're usually how kind of distro also works for like sets that haven't like released yet. You use the purchase order to get into the printer. But for some weird reason, we had to pay for this thing up front. And I don't know what kind of damage was done to this relationship, because what's really weird is the whole reason we stuck with the printer we did was because the relationship was supposed to be strong. So I'm a little baffled at the dick move there. But we also had kind of another issue that like blew my mind as to why this was a thing. And that leads to thing to learn number 3, which is hold partners accountable. I don't care how good the relationship is, but hold partners accountable to things. Fucking period. We had Origins Retail that was printed, and we had 50 promos that were printed on a sheet. Those were my initiatives for things like Learn to Plays and like community champions and referral programs and whatnot. And then on another page, we had 50 other promos. We had 100 promos. And the reason we had them split up is because this guy, this is the first thing I ever made for a company, by the way, was the Angel Retribution. Like I made that it was like printed as an official thing. The Angel Retribution Museum poster. I was proud of this. This took the other half of the sheet, which is why they were split. So we said, hey, go to this page and these 50 slots. Do not print, please. Do not collate them. Please cut them and send them to us. Instead, they collated them and put them in the booster packs. So I lost a lot of my marketing ability from that, and that was frustrating as all goddamn get out. But we just slapped them on the wrist. Why the fuck we slap them on the wrist for that? Like, that's one of those things that we needed concessions. You guys who are about to get cryptic beta, you're about to learn something. And I'm glad that Tanner is holding the printer accountable, at least making a valiant attempt to. But oh man, hold them accountable. I don't care what your logic is as far, like, I don't care how good the relationship is. If they screw up, you need to call them out on it. You don't have to call them out publicly, like Flesh and Blood, when they had the collation issues and the legendary problem with Outsiders. They said, like, hey, we know there's a thing and we're going to leave it there. They're not going to throw their printer under the bus publicly, God no. But I'm sure that there's something on the back end of some level of concession, be that, cheaper print run next time or speed or something along those lines. Like, we should have held them accountable for Origins Retail. We didn't. I don't know why not. But that was definitely holding us back. So as a result of that, we put a heavy focus on direct sales, and we became a sales company for kind of the beginning of 2023 really hard because we were trying to just get money in that pool so we can print Invasion. Courtesy of a thing that I will share later. I wish we didn't do that. But if anything, thing to learn number 4 from this effort is to work smarter, not harder. We worked harder, not smarter. We did the one-to-one relationships. We're like, hey, refer a store, and we're going to take those store owners down a sales funnel, and we'll go through like HCT Direct, our direct selling program. We had distro. We had Fun Again. We had a couple other like little piddly ones here and there, but we had distro. It existed. But the problem is we had a consignment. We had it through Fun Again. Now, Fun Again works with like your Southern Hobbies, your PhDs, and other distros. So it's not like we were banned from them, but they did have to be a part of every conversation, and it also cut into profits. It cut into margins in every step of the line. It makes sense. Like, they are holding the product and going through the initial shipping of said product. So like, it makes sense, but that definitely held us back quite a bit. And it led to a bit of a dilemma, especially when Fun Again ended up closing their doors. And we suddenly had to create our own partnerships with distro from scratch. And that was kind of another delay for Invasion. Like, uh-oh, like this thing has nowhere to go. And that was a big problem. And the thing to understand with distro is that distribution is a partnership. It's not like you send something to a shop and then stores just order it and then they push it out the door. Distros do market their product. They market through like buy a box promos, and they'll market through like going to trade shows. They'll market through doing their own retailer summits, and they'll market through magazines. ICV2 is a great example of one. GTM magazine, Game Trade magazine, that's Alliance Distribution's magazine. That is how they communicate their distro offerings to local game stores to get them to buy from Alliance. That's how they work. It's a partnership. Being able to go to a distro and saying like, hey, we are willing to work with you. Okay, now that's a big important thing. And they really gravitate towards that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of like kind of working through that, but we had a lot of challenges with that. But those are the go-to-market strategies for 2023. Get Invasions out the door. We were really proud of it. We were really proud of that product. Focus on company maturity, revamp communication efforts. That's what we wanted to do in 2023. The thing also to understand that's really important to understand here is that the plan was working. The strategy was actually working. Again, the internet doesn't set a benchmark for success or failure, and it was kind of hard to see a lot of what, like, if you were looking at the internet for Genesis, you would not think half of what was going on from a like growth perspective, because like there wasn't like content being made, and there weren't a lot of people talking about it. But it's because we were working on the business side, and we were like more focused on like getting into stores. And not like trying to, like we weren't exactly pushing the community to create things, and that kind of sucked. It would have been nice, but anyway, so the plan was working. We had organic growth that was on the rise. Discord was in fact growing with people who were curious about the game, and we had avenues for them to play them. That wasn't kind of a thing that we learned later though. Was like we didn't have a good strategy to like get stuff in their hands. They were kind of bottlenecked by our B2B strategy. Oops, fixable, but not with the time we had. But Discord was growing, which is, hey, we saw this, and that was cool, and we want to learn more. And we had stores that were reaching out. They were reaching out, and here's thing to learn number five, I think. I forgot number one. Here's a thing to learn though. Target the employees. Don't target the owners. Owners don't care. Well, they care, but they really want to know, like, how's this going to move in my store? But the employees, the ones who are not working for a lot of money, but are there because of passion and, like, I want to work for a game store. Oh, there's the ones to go after, because they're being the ones who are excited to, like, show other players, and they're going to be the ones who are going to, like, get the product knowledge to be able to help sell the game. But that said, you also need to prepare for the owners. They're going to ask you questions about margins. They're going to ask questions about, like, all right, I'm glad, you know, my sales associate is excited about this, but how do you actually move this through? Like, what are your product SKUs? And, you know, what do I need to buy in? And how are you actually going to help me move this product through? You got to be ready for that. And we were fairly ready for that. I liked where we were heading. But in addition to those stores reaching out, you know, we saw pockets of growth and opportunity. We had stores that were buying in. We had stores that were doing like learn to play, you know, open houses. We call them open houses, but we had, so in the United States, in kind of the 2 months before kind of the end of it all, we were getting new business in Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, Kansas, Florida, California, Washington, Utah, New York, Arizona, and Virginia. And it's very possible I was missing a few others. But these were actual sales, or they were like ones who were like very interested to just kind of do an open house and like really like in that funnel and jazzed. That was cool, and that was happening again organically. The referral program was starting to finally kick on. We were getting referrals. Osid and Chris, sales guy, you know, kind of new sales guy, part-time sales guy, like they were doing a lot of like kind of cold calls and just kind of introducing themselves, and we were like really leveraging that integrity and product knowledge and industry knowledge. It was working. We also had major stores up in the Canada area, like Face-to-Face Games that was a massive win. They wanted to give us a shot. They weren't going to help a lot, but they at least wanted to give us a shot, and that was cool. We had, you know, sales numbers, we had fluctuations of a couple hundred to a couple grand of new business every week. Definitely not great, but, you know, momentum and things like getting ready to close, and we were able to like really find those wins and be like, all right, what has been a good strategy from a sales perspective? Like we were getting somewhere for sure. Additionally, we had two other big things. The first one was getting TCG Player. March 24th, we had a call, and I worked that for 9 months. 9 months working that account, and I'll be real clear on that. On the conversations with CCG Player. What a weird breath of fresh air. I know, right? Probably not what you were expecting. The questions for the vetting questions from TCG Player were, I loved answering them. It gave me so much confidence in what Genesis was doing and how we were approaching the market in the industry. It was a lot of like, what are you doing to grow stores? And it was a lot of like, how are you partnering with this process? Not just, actually, there wasn't a single question about secondary market. There wasn't a single question about like valuing cards and things that would like lead to their respective commissions. They very much are we want to partner now kind of company. And meeting with Craig, the director of partnerships, it was very much we want to partner. And they have an onboarding strategy that is it's a little bit of pricey. It's pricey. But once you get through all of that, like you put money where your mouth is, and they partner with you. You guys probably just recently saw this with Battle Spirit Saga that had kind of a site takeover, and there are like a whole other things that TCG Player does, respecting the reach and the clout they have, and it's honestly kind of money well worth it, in my opinion, in my professional opinion there, and it was really cool. It was cool to get. It's also when I decided to leave the company though, like the moment that we're like, yeah, no, there's actually no other vetting. We're just going to talk about kind of what the rest of the process looks like. That was when I was done. And the reason for that is because of the other reason that it worked. This whole thing worked. And that would be the investors.